Ladies and gentlemen, what is up? Jonesy here, back once again to give you guys and girls another Hunter x Hunter review. This time, chapter 359. So let's just get right into this review. What an awesome chapter. My thoughts overall, just a brief summary of what I thought about the chapter. This was a very solid chapter. I'd give it an 8 or a 9 out of 10 based on how quickly we've moved forward in the plot of the Dark Continent arc, even though we got the necessary dialogue at the start of this chapter when the ship sets sail, which obviously is not as exciting as the murders and the cliffhanger we got at the end of this episode. You know, all the stuff with introducing the ship, getting sailed, all the Zodiac members, all that stuff before Kurapika and the bodyguards saw the bodyguard, what was his name again, Woody, being murdered. So yeah, it was still a very good written content of chapter. Just the pacing was still so solid all throughout this chapter. You know, you could argue that it seemed a bit rushed in regards to the whole length of the chapter of content, how much we actually got in the chapter, but really it was just getting to the meat of the next part of the story, just moving forward pretty quickly in this chapter. You get all the necessary dialogue out of the way, and then you lead the chapter with the cliffhanger, which was just awesome. Also, lots of characterization in this chapter, which I'll talk about a lot more later in this review. But first, I want to talk about the main point I got out of this chapter with the cliffhanger and the bodyguards, Woody's death, and the other security guards who were killed at the end of the chapter. Just talk about that and to try and work out how exactly they died. Now, one of the guards stated that Woody's blood had been completely drained out. So this leads to the possible, obvious answer that Shizuku cleaned up all the blood, destroying the evidence with her vacuum nen ability, and probably Shizuku killed Woody, or maybe some other member killed Woody like Franklin, because as we see in this chapter, there seems to be bullet holes in Woody's body, and we know Franklin's emission nen ability is like a machine gun rapid fire, so yeah, that could definitely be a possibility of how Woody was murdered. Also, with the guards who were killed on the second last page, their faces look dried up, so again, maybe after they were killed, Shizuku cleaned up the blood and then someone else obviously killed them, like Franklin, so that's definitely a possibility. Also, the guards who were killed, who I just mentioned, it's really hard to tell what their faces looked like before, because their faces really look dried up in this panel, but I think it's clear enough that these dead guards are not the same ones who lied to Kurapika after Woody's death, who they lied to him about knowing Nen. So based on that, it's more obvious that, you know, these are just general guards, and the troop possibly is just eliminating them to get closer to the Kaikin treasure. And because all of these guards are, you know, just ordinary general guards in the Black Whale ship, it's possible that the troop killed them off in order to get closer to the princes of Kaikin and steal all their treasure. Definitely a possibility there, because, you know, there's clearly hundreds of guards on the ship protecting not only the Kaikin family, but also, remember from last week's chapter, celebrities as well, nobles, and all the treasure, money and riches that they all have. So the troop, Carollo, they want to get all of that, so it makes sense, because we know how Carollo rolls. He wants to get this stuff, and also we don't necessarily know if the troop know yet if Kurapika is on the ship, so just keep that in mind. So personally, that's my thoughts on that. That's what I reckon occurred with those murders, but I've also got another possibility of how the guards were murdered. I personally don't support this, because I reckon Shizuku was the one working for the troop who did it, but this deserves a mention just because there's enough deserve it, really. That being, the security guards' murders could have been an internal conflict, an inside job, where maybe one of another princes of Kaiken, their Nen beast from the pot, was used to kill a majority of the security guards in order to eventually make it easier for them to take out the other Kaiken princes. So all of that it's all huge plot story progression to this Dark Continent arc, clearly, as you know, the killings have started, but we don't know who is the culprit yet. It's just the bloodbath has started. It's just the killings. We've already got killings in both chapters now of this arc, and it's just going to keep on continuing. Now, I want to talk about Kurapika now. Huge characterization in this chapter for him. He's almost shocked in a sense, or flustered, I guess, in a way, that he's the only guard who knows about the succession wars of the Kaiken princes, as he worked out that the guards, they have no clue from reading that internal monologue of Kurapika. So, you know, this means that Kurapika is going to need to work hard and work so much harder to prevent Obito and Wobble from being murdered. So it's a huge burden on Kurapika to take, really. I mean, heck, Kurapika, he concluded that Parison didn't even know about the succession wars, which my first reaction to it was like, what? Honestly, I thought Parison would have been the first one to have known about that. But even in the last panel, Kurapika seems like he's losing a bit of control of the situation, where, you know, the security guards, they just continuously dying, and he's got no clue who is killing these security guards, which we just have to wait and see what happens next. Now I want to go right back to the start of this chapter. Obviously there's a lot of world building here, as the Black Whale ship has set off sail into unknown waters to the new continent, and then eventually going to the Dark Continent. And I want to mention that the pacing of this chapter is quite rapid and fast, as I mentioned before in my quick summary of my thoughts on the chapter, because even though it seems slow at the start with the necessary dialogue that the start of this voyage to the Dark Continent has to have, that has to happen, because we're eventually having a fast transition of pace to killings of guards, which happens so quickly, which it essentially skips to the most important bit of the chapter and focuses a lot of time on that. So we're getting the pacing slow, but then it eventually rises and gets a lot quicker, which is good for the chapter. But because we know it's going to take the Black Whale 2 months to reach the Dark Continent, the first 3 weeks being needed to refuel, and then the next 5 weeks to arrive at the Dark Continent, but which in reality, remember, is the fake new continent where the general passengers, the public, will get off because you know, as the Zodiacs are explaining, the rest will head on Moral's ship to the real border of the Dark Continent and explore those unknown waters. But now thinking about the killings with the pacing of this chapter, either the killings of the security guards occurred right from the start, or that some time had passed after the ship had left, probably a couple of hours before the killing started. So either way, the pacing starts off slow, as I said before, but gets very quick. But another possible reason why the guards' murders could have occurred very soon after the ship set sail is because we got a panel of the Zodiac Cheadle in the medical care facility trying to fix as many injuries as possible. So that we know occurred in the last chapter right before the ship set sail, because we know in levels 3 and 4 many deaths had occurred. So now a couple of pages later we get the guard's death, so obviously not a lot of time has passed. So again, reaching to my conclusion that The ship set sail, and nearly immediately after, the deaths of bodyguards started to occur. So, yeah, that's enough said on that. That's probably too long to spell on that, but whatever. The funny things I loved in this chapter were beyond Netero, just that absolute motherfucking chiller. He just does not care, and just the expression on his face, and also the Zodiac Kanzai in one of the panels. It kind of looks like he was just playing a video game, not even doing his duty. It also looks like we see one of the Zodiacs, Batobai, in that black and white, dark shaded panel halfway through in the middle of this chapter, and I was surprised how tall this guy was. He was just, it's like a giant standing over people, man. But the last point I want to bring up, we were introduced to many more of the princes halfway through the chapter. We also got to see Prince Nazubi again. We got introduced to him in the last chapter, and we got to see some new ones as well, particularly characterization, a lot of characterization to Lady Kachu and Fu. You know, it seems like on the outside to the public they're best of friends, but in reality their outside life is a complete lie, really. Like, even though they're teaming up together, they'd stab the other in the back right away in order to get ahead in the succession wars, especially Kachu. Her personality definitely of what we saw in that chapter, and Melody picked that up right away. But they were the two princes of Kaiken that really went into detail in this chapter. Not many others besides, not any other characterization except for Krapika that I mentioned before. So with that being said, I'm done the review, signing out. Greg Jones off. Make sure to rate this video, comment your thoughts about this chapter, especially about who do you think murdered the guards, because that's a big cliffhanger we got in this chapter. Do you think it was Shizuku and Franklin possibly working together with the troop to try and eliminate some of the guards to get closer to the Kaiken treasure that the royal family and the Kaiken have? And also, what were your thoughts about how quickly this chapter ran? It started slow at the start with the pacing, very slow, but it got very quick, the pacing, which I thought was very good to get to the main point. But that being said, share this video to the masses on social media and subscribe for more Hunter x Hunter content. Thanks guys, have an awesome day.